College football's 2025 season has become a fraud fest, and Texas auditioned for the starring role last week at the Swamp. Welcome into SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. We will get into the Longhorns going splat at Florida ahead of Texas rivalry game, a critical matchup this weekend in Dallas against Oklahoma. Just what the heck is going on with Texas? Can their season be saved? We're also going to take a look across the conference and see if we can determine who the SEC's frontrunner at this point is for a national championship contender. We feel pretty confident saying Ohio State looks like a contender from the Big Ten. Oregon looks like a contender. Miami from the ACC. Who's the SEC's frontrunner? We'll get into that. Also make our Week 7 picks against the spread. John, we'll get into some of the specifics of last weekend here in a bit, but as I was watching the game Saturday unfold, I was struck by a thought, and I think I texted you something to this effect of, I feel like the SEC remains best positioned of any conference to qualify the most teams for the playoff. However, I think it is a not far-fetched possibility that the SEC could be shut out of not only the national championship game, but maybe even the college football playoff semifinals. I'm not sure who the superpowers are in the conference at this point.
Yeah, you kind of threw me off for starters, though, when you mentioned that fraud fest.
Yeah,
I
you like
wasn't
that,
ready
didn't
for.
you?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of a negative start, but I'm kind of a negative person, so I kind of was impressed with it.
Uh-huh.
But I'm regaining my footing now. Yeah, I got your text. We're talking about that. I mean, go back to preseason, and Texas was kind of in a lot of these polls and rankings. There are a million of them. I mean, Texas, I would say, was a consensus pick amongst the SEC teams. If there would be a national champion from the SEC, Texas was kind of anointed as the champion, just as Arch Manning was anointed as a Heisman Trophy front runner almost. Uh, Man, though, you watch the Longhorns play, and that ragtag offensive line is theirs. I don't know any quarterback who would flourish behind that bunch. Um, Nico Yamaleava, maybe he can scramble pretty well, and you just wrote a column about maybe he should transfer to Texas and save their offense next year from Arch. But yeah, you're right. There's no team that really sticks out right now in the SEC. And I look around, Miami has certainly looked formidable. And I tell you what, don't count out those Red Raiders from Lubbock, Texas.
Great point.
Uh, the oil's pumping out there, and
No, it's so true, John. Like, I mean, seriously, and that's when I say, like, it is not far-fetched to say the SEC could qualify 4, maybe even 5 teams for the playoff and not have anybody in the semifinals. You're right about Texas Tech, and you have Oregon, Miami, Ohio State in the conversation as well, or maybe there's a sleeper that crashes the party, sure. But I mean, I think the SEC will have somebody in the semifinals. I think it is more likely than not that at least one SEC team advances the semifinals. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the SEC could qualify the most teams. And, when it gets to the Final Four, they're sitting at home watching because it is a deep league, no doubt about it. There are 9 or 10 teams that I think are still in the playoff hunt at this juncture, but that doesn't mean there's that many teams that can win a national championship. I don't know if there's any teams that can win a national championship. The league is missing a super boss. It's missing a bully. It is a good conference, top to bottom. We saw that in the non-conference play, but there's no bully in this league. And in the way that Miami is in the ACC, I don't see Miami losing before the college football playoff. I think they're going to roll into the playoff at 13-0. When I look at Ohio State's schedule, unless they were to lose in the Big Ten championship, or they just can't get over the boogeyman that is Michigan. I mean, I don't know that I see Ohio State losing. Ohio State's been so dominant, they're boring. Like, I mean, they're not exciting maybe in the way that Miami is, but I mean, my gosh, the opponent can't score, I mean, they haven't allowed 10 points or more against any team so far. And I know the schedule has not been great, but you have to score to beat them, and nobody can score against them. So there are some front runners in other leagues. You mentioned Texas Tech, the clear front runner at this point in the Big 12. And I guess that's kind of both a blessing and a curse for the SEC that there is this depth of good teams, but the curse is I don't know that there's a great team. That's what Texas was supposed to be. And there's all these narratives running around for why the SEC has surrendered its dominance. Is it NIL? Is it transfer portal? Is it Nick Saban's retirement? You hear all these things. And yet I also think Texas deserves some of the blame. I mean, Texas, who's got a bigger and better war chest than Texas, right? You can't blame NIL for the SEC not having a dominant team when Texas resides in the SEC. Like, part of the SEC's problem is their team with the most talent and the deepest and richest war chest. They're blowing it in real time right in front of us.
Well, see, that's a great example. Texas is a great example. I think LSU is another one.
Yeah.
I overrated LSU, obviously, because I picked it number one in preseason. And I did that based on what I thought would be an elite offense returning, built around quarterback Garrett Nussmeier and a bevy of talented wide receivers. Then to that, you add this awesome transfer portal class that they brought in and to help the defense, because the defense had been just lagging behind the offense. And so you bring in this defense and right away, coming out of the gate, it pretty much slammed Clemson. Little did I know that other programs would slam Clemson as well. But yeah, so I thought LSU had the makings of a championship team, but now look at that offense. It can't run the ball. Offensive line, like Texas's, is a problem. So I look at LSU. You talk about Texas is blowing it. I think LSU's blowing it because it's got the money. It doesn't have as many oil wells as Texas, but it's got that Raising Cane's fried chicken just cooking up a championship.
Another chicken man. That's 2 weeks in a row. We're talking about the chicken man on the podcast.
Yes,
Two different chicken men.
Yeah, different chicken man, but yeah, he's frying it up. But yeah, it's just it's not playing at that level. Now, it's only lost one game, but forget the record. Just watch the team play. And do you think, well, now that team could beat Ohio State? That team could beat Oregon? That team couldn't beat Texas Tech from what I've seen.
So let me ask you this. And the question is not, John, which SEC team is most likely to make the playoff, because I think that could produce a different answer. My question to you is, who is the SEC's best bet to win a national championship? Who's their A team that you're looking at that you think this is the team more so than any other from this conference that could be the national championship contender from the SEC?
Man, A team. I think there are a lot of B teams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see an A team. I'll go back to my fast pitch softball days of many decades ago. Yeah. I played
how many decades ago was that, John?
Well, too many to really remember. I don't want to get into the details, bog us down with that. But yeah, I was like in a B league, and the rankings were all determined by how fast the pitchers threw.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have hit an A pitcher, but I did okay in B league. Well, this is a B league. The SEC looks like a B league. I just don't see one team. Who would be the A team? And you presented me with this challenge, and I've spent way too much time thinking about it.
Yeah, I gave you the question in advance, John. I mean,
Yeah, I know, and
I want
I've
to
been
let our
working on
listeners
it. Yeah,
behind the curtain here. I warned you
yes, I
before the
did.
episode. I was going to ask you who's the SEC's best bet to win the national championship, not make the playoff, not win the conference championship. Who's the best bet to win the national championship? And now here you are stalling with old war
I
stories
know,
about your
I know.
time
I'm going
on
back.
playing
Yeah,
playing B League softball. By the way,
yeah,
John, I played on a three-time E League slow pitch championship team
an
in
E
Columbia, Missouri.
League.
I mean, dynasty is a word thrown around pretty loosely these days, but I think it would have been appropriate to call that
What?
slow pitch team I was on the E League. We got promoted up to the D League one year after our three titles in the E League, and didn't go so well. We didn't choose to get promoted. They kind of forced us up, and uh, that went about how
Yeah,
you would expect.
I don't care about how many letters you or numbers you've got. If you're winning, that's the league I want to be in. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. That didn't bother me. Like, well, you can hit okay in the B league. Yeah, and that's the league I'm in. I don't care about that other stuff. Um, so okay, enough beating around the bush. I kept looking at these different teams because there are 9 or 10 teams you can look at. I mean, that speaks to this to the SEC's depth. There are all these teams you can look at and say, "Well, he could make the playoffs. Could he win a championship?" Um, I finally decided on Ole Miss,
Okay.
and my reasoning, several reasons. One, Lane Kiffin. I think he's a really good coach. A couple of years ago, everybody was saying, "Well, I don't know if Lane Kiffin can win the big game." And then last year, Ole Miss just went out and hammered Georgia, the SEC champion, in a playoff team. But then it lost to Kentucky. So people said, well, I just don't know if he can, win can do all it takes to even make the playoffs. But I think he's a really good coach. He's a really good offensive coach. And I like what I've seen of this team. It's not as good. It doesn't have the star power it did on defense last year, but the defense is pretty good. It's probably like a top 35 defense nationally. And
Boy, that sounds like national championship credentials, John.
well,
A
well,
top
wait.
35 defense.
Okay, but if you want to start pointing out flaws, we can go right down the list in the
True.
SEC, and there won't be anybody standing. So again, this is we're grading on the curve here. So Ole Miss can run the ball, it can throw it, and it's got two, not one, two pretty good quarterbacks.
Yeah,
Trinidad,
yeah, that's an advantage having Trinidad Chambliss and Austin Simmons, who was the QB1 coming into
yes,
the season. Now Trinidad Chambliss, after Simmons' injury, has claimed that role. I would be surprised at this point if I mean you can't go away from Simmons now, or excuse me, from Chambliss now, can you? So, but
no,
no, I mean they have what Oklahoma, I believe, doesn't in that they got too deep potential star power at quarterback. I mean, Oklahoma, they're going to make do here with Michael Hawkins while John Mateer recovers from hand surgery. But that's the difference between Ole Miss and Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma has the defense in their advantage or in their favor. I'm wondering, John, if John Mateer never had this injury and hand surgery, would you have been tempted to say Oklahoma in answer to this question of who the SEC's top national title contender is, or no?
John Mateer, if he hadn't gotten injured, and with Oklahoma's defense, Oklahoma might be the best team in the SEC, but I still don't think he can make the playoff because of that brutal schedule that it still has remaining. It's already played some tough teams, but it's got just, 6 losable games the rest of the way. So if you're going to pick a team and say, this is the team I think has the best chance to win a championship, you kind of got to figure, well, it's got to make the playoff first. And I just don't think Oklahoma can because of that schedule. And
But John, are you basing that off of? Do you not think the committee will take a 9-3 team? I mean, if that's your stance, I understand it. The committee had opportunities to take a 9-3 team last year and didn't. Now that decision didn't age all that well, and supposedly the formula for evaluating strength of schedule has tweaked a little bit. But I'm wondering how much of your thought on Oklahoma facing too much schedule and not being able to make the playoff with this schedule is based on the committee not taking a 9-3 team last year. If someone said, "Hey, I think the committee might be willing to take a 9-3 team this year," would you look at Oklahoma differently? Because I think they can get to 9-3 and can get in with that strength of schedule.
Okay, here's the thing. It could come down to Oklahoma at 9-3 versus another SEC team at 10-2. So then head to head could be crucial. For example, if Oklahoma finished 9-3, Tennessee were 10-2, but lost to Oklahoma in Neyland Stadium, then Oklahoma should get the playoff bid. Strength of schedule, head to head. Never mind that record that it has one more loss. No, it would have done more than Tennessee. So maybe you can make the same case if Oklahoma's playing, let's see, Alabama. And Alabama goes 10-2, but Oklahoma goes 9-3 and beats it. If it came down to those two, I think with Alabama though at 10-2 in that schedule it's in. I'm not even sure Oklahoma can get to 9-3 though. It's as good as the defense is, and as much as I like John Mateer, I'm not sure he can get to 9-3.
Oh, I think it can get to 9-3.
Well, do you think it's going to be? Well, I don't want to upstage our picks. Everybody's waiting on those.
I mean, they're 5-0 right now, so they're playing with some house money
are
there. I mean, they got 7 games left. Do I think they can go 4-3 in their final 7? That's the question. Yeah, I think they can go 4-3 in their final 7.
What if John Mateer's broken hand doesn't heal properly?
Well, then that's a different conversation, of course. But if they can go, if they can split with Texas and I don't know when Mateer's coming back. Let's say he misses the Texas and South Carolina games. If you can split with Texas and South Carolina, they got 1 loss with 5 to go. John Mateer comes back October 25th against Ole Miss, and they need to go 3-2 in the final 5, and John Mateer's back. I think Oklahoma can do that. But I'm not saying they're the best. They're the best bet to win the national championship. I think the point is, and maybe this is why we were waffling around so much. This is a hard question to answer. And to your point on Ole Miss, I think if the question was, who's the SEC's most likely team to make the playoff, I think Ole Miss would be a good choice because they're sitting here at 5-0. They've already made it through 3/8 of the SEC schedule. They've played 3 conference games. Nobody else in the conference has played 3 conference games. Ole Miss has. They're 3-0 in the league. That gives them an advantage toward making the playoff. They only have 5 SEC games left. They only have 2 ranked teams left on the schedule. Georgia and Oklahoma, both on the road. So you couple options to make the playoff. You lose both those, you hold serve against all your unranked teams, or you split against those ranked teams on the road, and that gives you some breathing room to drop one somewhere else. I think Ole Miss is a great bet to make the playoff. I'm still a little bit unsold on them as the premier national championship contender from this league. I'm not sure who I am sold on, but I asked the question, so I should attempt to answer it. I'm going to go with Alabama, John. As far as the SEC's best bet to win a national championship, I think you need to have a quarterback playing well to be a national championship contender. Ty Simpson went from a question mark coming into the season, a question mark in week 1 after that loss to Florida State, to the last 4 weeks. He's looked like an asset, not a question mark. He was excellent against Georgia a couple weeks ago. He was the better quarterback in the battle with Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt last week. Alabama has a lot of schedule too. They already are saddled with the 1 loss to Florida State. However, much like Oklahoma, because the schedule is so strong, I think Alabama can get into the playoff potentially at 9-3. And if you're in the playoff, you have a chance. We saw that last year with Ohio State. Ohio State had lost some momentum, seemingly having lost to Michigan. The committee took it out on them in the seeding seeded them behind, Penn State, a team they'd beaten in the regular season. Ohio State said, "We don't care. We're in the playoff. Got a great team." They go out and win the national championship. I think Alabama could be the same way. Just find a way to get into the playoff against that brutal schedule. And with the way they've looked the past couple weeks, I think they might be the SEC's best bet. Now, does that make them a great bet? No. I think if we were drafting teams to win the national championship, I don't know that I would take an SEC team within my first 3 picks. What about you? If I gave you the number 1 pick in a draft of all the teams in the land to choose a national champion, who are you taking first?
Well, you have to take Ohio State.
Okay. You're taking Ohio State. I'd probably take Miami second because I think they're going to get a bye into the quarterfinals. I think they're going to roll in at 13-0, be seeded either 1 or 2. Carson Beck playing at a very high level. They have great wide receivers. Their defense is the best of the Mario Cristobal era. Ruben Bain is a game wrecker. So I probably would have taken Ohio State if I had the first pick. You take Ohio State, I take Miami. Then who do you take third?
Oregon.
Yeah. And there we are. An SEC team at best is the 4th team off the board to win the national championship, I think.
Yeah. And if Penn State hadn't gone belly up against UCLA last week, I would probably be saying it might be it would be right there with the top SEC teams. Now it's viewed entirely different. It's in the same class with Texas. And we just don't know. I really like what I've seen of Texas Tech, but I haven't seen it against a really good team, so I don't know how that would translate. But it doesn't have any obvious glaring weakness. Maybe could have run the ball a little better in the red zone if you want to get picky, but a dynamic offense and an underrated defense. So yeah, I would just see. I think of it, if you put Texas Tech in the SEC, it would be one of those teams that it would be probably one of the higher ranked teams in the SEC, I think.
Yeah, Texas Tech's so tough because unlike some other teams in the conference, they didn't play that marquee non-conference game. I guess their quote unquote marquee non-conference game was against Oregon State. Well, Oregon State's 0-6. They stink. So that translates to Texas Tech did not have a marquee non-conference game. And so you're comparing them against their Big 12 peers. And I just don't know that that is much of a comparison. So they are maybe the most difficult team in the land, I think, to evaluate in terms of their national championship potential, because you're comparing them to other Big 12 teams. And I don't think we would say there's anyone else in the Big 12 that would even be would be within a whiff of the national championship conversation. So it's so hard to compare them. I mean, Miami, the ACC's not great, but they've stepped outside the conference. They played Notre Dame, they played Florida. So there's more of a measuring stick on Miami. There's just no measuring stick on Texas Tech. But I want to. We may revisit this conversation later, John. But we'll leave it there. You're taking Ole Miss tepidly as the SEC's best national championship contender. I'm taking Alabama without much conviction, and we'll leave it there. The team that we would have considered more seriously in the preseason, John, Texas. I mentioned in the open a land full of frauds. It's not just Texas. You look at the preseason top 10. Clemson, a preseason darling, has 3 losses. Notre Dame's got 2 losses. Penn State with 2 losses. Texas with 2 losses. What's your read on the situation with Texas, John? I mean, this is a waste of a really talented roster. Arch Manning obviously was overhyped. He has a 5-star name. He's not a 5-star talent, but you touched on it earlier. The offensive line is not doing him any favors. The defense is not as stout as it was, I think, last season. What do you make of the situation at Texas on the heels of that loss in the Swamp?
Well, give Florida some credit. Mm-hmm. Florida's played pretty good defense all year, and it did again against Texas. But I still don't think, oh my gosh, Florida has arrived. It's really it's much better than its record. It may be better than its record, but I just thought that game was more about Texas. Texas just doesn't look like a good team. There's no spark there. You go back to that loss to Ohio State when we thought we were watching perhaps a preview of the national championship game. Texas's offense was so ordinary. And I know Ohio State has an elite defense, certainly. But it ran the ball well at times. But that was almost like that was the high mark for Texas, that loss to Ohio State. That's as good as it's looked all year against an FBS opponent, I guess. Well, Sam Houston, I guess FBS now. That was a runaway. But I look at Texas. I expected, even though it had suffered significant losses in the O-line, I thought it would be good there because I just think of Texas recruiting, NIL money. It will field a good offensive line, no doubt about it. But it hasn't. It's a bad offensive line. It's not even mediocre. It's bad. And when you watch it play UTEP or San Jose State or somebody, and it's not knocking that opponent off the ball at the line of scrimmage, that really raises questions. And now we've seen that. We saw it against Florida. It just doesn't look like a playoff team, much less a championship team.
No, it really doesn't. And at this point, we can't really say Arch Manning is a young quarterback anymore. He's started 7 games in his career. You add the 2 starts last season into the 5 this year. He's a third-year player. I still hear some people saying Arch Manning's a young quarterback. He's not. He's a third-year guy with 7 starts to his name. He's not the only problem. He is one of the problems. And they just don't have any answers. I don't know what their identity is on offense, frankly. I don't know what their identity is as a team right now. I mean, you look at some of the better teams in the SEC, and I don't think there's any flawless team in this conference. But we're sort of at the midpoint of the season now. I think there's several teams where I feel like I know what their identity is. I don't know what Texas' identity is. And I think that's a recipe to suffer a couple more losses. And now here they are entering this rivalry game against Oklahoma. Oklahoma starting its backup quarterback, Michael Hawkins, conceivably with John Mateer out. As we record this, it's not been officially declared that Mateer won't play, but that certainly seems to be the way it's leaning on the heels of Mateer having hand surgery. I'm wondering if this is an elimination game for Texas. They already have 2 losses. Now, I thought, well, they're not going to be overly penalized for losing in week 1 on the road at Ohio State, an Ohio State team that may well go into the playoff at number 1. But now they've lost to Florida, a team with 3 losses, one of which came to USF. I think Florida is going to lose some more games. If they were to lose to an Oklahoma team starting its backup quarterback, I don't know if Texas can recover from that. Even if they rally to 9-3, I don't know if they would make the playoff. I mentioned with Alabama's schedule, with Oklahoma's schedule, there might be a path for those teams at 9-3. Maybe there is for Texas if there's enough chaos in other places, and they beat Georgia in November and they beat Texas A&M and they're playing hot down the stretch in November. Maybe they could get in. But I think this is, at the very least, potentially an elimination game for Texas. If you were to lose to a backup quarterback in Oklahoma on the heels of losing to 3-loss Florida, I don't think we can definitively say it's an elimination game. I think it's potentially an elimination game for Texas. What do you say to that?
Yeah, particularly since you brought up earlier about the chances of Oklahoma going 9-3. Mm-hmm. If Oklahoma's 9-3 and Texas is 9-3, it's obvious who goes if Oklahoma beats Texas and has played a much tougher schedule. The thing that strikes me watching, as you say, no real identity, but watching Texas's offense, not only did I assume Texas would have a competent offensive line, I thought its receivers would be really good, even though it lost a lot of receivers from last year. Well, Its quarterback's not that great, and the offensive line's not that great. Maybe the receiving core is better than I think it is. It's just none of this is meshing together. But right now, I don't see any standout part of the offense running back either. I just don't see anything that says, well, they can lean on this. You got to have something you can lean on. And if you've got a troubled offensive line that's erratic in its blocking, you really need a quarterback, the John Mateer type, who can just make plays. And Arch just isn't able to do that now. He's a pretty good runner, but he's not a guy that he drops back and he's trying to decide when to scramble, when not to. He's not elusive back there in the pocket.
Yeah, he's a pretty good runner. He's not Jaden Daniels. I think back to Jaden Daniels' Heisman year, like LSU didn't have a bunch of all-stars around him. Their offensive line was pretty average, but Jaden Daniels he was a Heisman winner. He was the definition of a Heisman winner and could do those type of things. Arch Manning, good runner, average passer, not a Heisman caliber player. He cannot make up for the deficiencies around him. On a better team, we might be talking about Arch Manning much differently right now. On this team, he's not good enough to overcome the other deficiencies we've seen from Texas.
Yeah, I guess, it's just, it's really hard to say how people have been so wrong about Arch Manning, because he probably got more favorable publicity than any player I can ever remember. I mean, the build up for Arch Manning is like, go back to the last 2 seasons when Texas made the playoffs, and Quinn Ewers is the quarterback playing well, and everybody's saying, man, we need to get Arch Manning in there. Quinn Ewers,
which was a ridiculous narrative, by the way.
Quinn Ewers, he can only take you so far. We need an Arch Manning to push us over the top. Well, now the top's farther away, and I don't think you can get there with Arch Manning. So, was it Steve Spurrier that wondered about how good Arch Manning was? He said he's playing behind a 7th round draft pick.
Yeah, credit the head ball coach. He was all over this one. He really was. And I think, like, you asked the question, John, how could everybody have been so wrong on Arch Manning? I think it's an answer that resides in 7 letters on the back of the jersey, right? I think we all thought, there's no way this guy can't be a good quarterback. He's the grandson of Archie. He's the nephew of Peyton and Eli. He may not be the next Peyton. He may not be the next Archie, but he's going to be good, right? And then, well, he's got those 7 letters on the back of the jersey. But other than that, you would never, maybe appearances, physical appearances, but based on his performance, you'd never mistake this guy for Manning, I don't think.
Here's the thing, too, Blake, and this contributed to the narrative, is he's a Manning playing quarterback, so he'll be really good. And then you say, oh, my gosh, but this guy can run, too. Peyton and Eli couldn't run. Now, Archie could, but it's almost like, no, this is Archie's grandson here. This is another Archie who can just take over a game, a runner, a scrambler, passer, that kind of thing. Archie Manning, because I'm so old, I can go back to watching Archie Manning, and he was the ultimate team lifter. He could take an average team and make it a champion, or at least a team that could beat a champion. And he had all those extra qualities. But I think people looked at him, looked at Arch that way. He can throw the ball because his uncles are Eli and Peyton, but he can run too. So he might be even better.
Yeah. And how wrong we all were. And it's worth reiterating, to be fair to Arch, he's not had a lot of help around him, but he's not the X factor either. He's not making his teammates look better. He's kind of revealing his teammates to be the underachievers that they are. He's had a hand in that. They're not making him better. He's not making them better. I want to get back to Florida, though, John. We've spent a lot of time over the weeks, over the years, talking about Billy Napier on this podcast, a guy that's been on the hot seat for probably as long as anybody in the land, not just in the SEC, but beyond.
Yeah.
Billy Napier, he saves his finest work for when his seat is scalding hot. We saw this from him last season. It's remarkable to say, John, but in the last calendar year, Billy Napier now owns victories against Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin, and Steve Sarkisian. The problem for Billy Napier is that he's played other games along the way, and it's what happens in those other games. And now, you look at the reality of Florida, they're still staring down the barrel of a daunting schedule. The defense has been playing well all season. The offense, I thought, started to finally take some shape. DJ Lagway looked as effective as he has all year. That run game was good against Texas. The freshman wide receiver, Dallas Wilson, he was a jolt of life into the pass game. But then I look back at the schedule, as soon as I talk myself into, can Billy Napier pull another Houdini act here and work himself off the hot seat? Well, then I think, he's already lost 3 games this season, including the loogie-logged loss to South Florida. That's a stain in more ways than one that just doesn't dissipate quickly. And then you look at the schedule, and there are still 5 ranked opponents lurking on the schedule for a team that already has 3 losses. And I think, gosh, he could go, 7 games remaining. It would be, heck, it'd be kind of impressive if they went 4-3 in these next 7 with 5 ranked opponents remaining. But even 4-3 only gets him to 6-6. And this is a year 4 coach who's sub 500. It's one of those deals where it's like Billy Napier deserved a victory lap for 48 to 72 hours. He outcoached Steve Sarkisian in this game, I thought, as improbable as that it might sound to say. I thought he did. So give him the victory lap for 72 hours. But then what's he left with once that victory lap ends, John? I think Billy Napier is still on one of the hottest seats in the land. Do you see it any differently?
No, I don't. And I kind of look at Florida differently. You go back to last year, because Florida finished strong and won some big games. It created a perception that this was an overachieving team because it had started out so poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at Florida, well, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. It's not a very good team. But look at, it's pulling off all these big wins, almost as though as if that were a testament to Billy Napier's premier coaching ability. We know better, of course. And now when I look at this team is better than I thought it would be. Never mind the record. When I watch it play, I didn't think Florida would be this good in the trenches, in the offensive line or the defensive line. Defense is pretty nasty. And the offensive line is better than I thought it would be. Florida's got 2 pretty good running backs. You mentioned Dallas Wilson looks like an all-SEC receiver. He's just a freshman. But you see all these parts, and where this could be a pretty good – this looks like this is a more talented team than I thought it would be. And so you're sitting there wondering, well, how's it going to win 4 more games against the schedule? Looking back, how did it lose so badly to South Florida? How does it not played any better than it already has? It's almost as though this is an indictment. He gets a big win against Texas, but in a way it's an indictment of, why hasn't this team played better? Why hasn't it won more? And to me, it just screams, you got to get rid of this guy.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's the reality. Is as much as they deserve, some applause for thumping Texas, it does then beg the follow-up question of, how did you lose 3 games in September? Because I think this is a team with more than enough talent to be better than 2-3. That's the reality of it for Florida, and you're just behind the eight ball once you're at this point with that schedule. I mean, they could scramble and get to 6-6 or 7-5, but where does that leave you with a fourth year coach sitting on 6-6 or 7-5? I think that leaves you with a coaching search. Another program I want to touch on, John, because they have a big game this weekend. That's Georgia Auburn. Would it surprise you to learn, John, to hear that Hugh Freeze's record at Auburn is worse than Billy Napier's at Florida in terms of winning percentage? He hasn't been there for as many games yet, but his winning percentage at Auburn's worse than Billy Napier's at Florida. And now Georgia, a little bit of a wobbly Georgia team, but Georgia nonetheless, a team that's owned this rivalry since Kirby Smart's got there. Now Georgia's coming to town, and I'm just wondering, we've spent a lot of time talking about Billy Napier being on the hot seat. How much rope does Hugh Freeze have here with a 14-16 overall record, sitting on a couple losses, and now here comes Georgia?
Yeah, you're right. I thought Auburn had the chance to be the most improved team in the SEC. Thought it did some good work in the portal. It's got a really good receiving core. I thought Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma would give it an upgraded quarterback. It has pretty good running backs. And I watched it play Baylor in that opener, and I said, yep, this is just what I thought Auburn would be. It's a much improved team. Arnold will make a difference. This team will be able to run the ball. And then I just watched it the last 2 weeks. And yeah, there's something amiss here. And you would think playing at home, you've had an open date, you've had 2 weeks to get ready for Georgia in the South's deep South's oldest football rivalry. This would be the perfect spot for an upset. And you go back to when Hugh Freeze was at Ole Miss in better days. Remember, he made his mark with those big upsets. He beat Alabama. He beat Nick Saban. So everything points to that. But then I think Kirby Smart versus Hugh Freeze. Kirby Smart just doesn't lose to rivals. Very rarely. He's lost 2 games since the 2017 season. He's lost, counting that season, his second year at Georgia. He's lost 2 games to his biggest rivals, Georgia Tech, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
He's dominated all those rivalries. And so that's why I can't foresee Auburn flipping the script here. I just don't think it's good enough right now. And I'm not overly enamored with Georgia.
No, me neither. The history is hard to overlook, but this is a chance, I think, for Hugh Freeze to start to reshape his tenure. If it's ever going to happen for him, it's these next 2 weeks, because the schedule's not as daunting as some of the others we've been talking about on the pod today, like Florida's, like Oklahoma's, like Alabama's. Auburn's schedule's tough, but it's not quite as daunting as those teams. But I look at these next 2 games coming out of the open date. They've got Georgia coming to town this weekend, and then Missouri coming to town next weekend. Missouri is going to have its hands full with Alabama this weekend. And so this is sort of the defining 2-game stretch for me, where Auburn can come out of this bye, come back playing like a different team. And it's like, all right, everybody pump the brakes here with the Hugh Freeze hot seat talk. Auburn's going to be okay. Or the reverse of that is you lose back-to-back to Georgia and Missouri at home. I think it might be time to start reaching for the checkbook at Auburn. One more before we get to our picks, John. We haven't talked about Kentucky in a while for good reason. They are the SEC's doormat. But you didn't think I was going there on this episode, did you?
No, I did not. No, it's this is not SEC basketball unfiltered.
Yeah, well, Kentucky lost by 21 points to Georgia on Saturday. That game is not worth discussing. It went probably about how most of us expected. But then apparently Mark Stoops was asked after the game about a rumor that he'd talked with school officials about a possible buyout, in the preceding months. And Mark Stoops, who has a buyout of about $40 million, John, here's what Mark Stoops said. He said, quote, "I'd hate to give anything like that legs. There's zero chance I'm walking away. There's no quitting me." So that's unequivocally 100% false. Well, I would hope so, John, and I would think so. If I have a $40 million buyout, I'm not walking away. I'm not breaking any rules. I'm coloring inside the line. I'm not even thinking about cheating. No, I'm playing by the rules. I'm taking my losses. And if Kentucky wants to get rid of me, I'm saying $40 million. Bring it on.
Yeah, you couldn't get me out of there with a SWAT team. You could send them in there, and I would just lock myself in the vault with that $40 million payday. One of my podcast consultants, Cody, I've mentioned before, Cody was predicting a possible end to the Mark Stoops era this past weekend, and he was hearing those rumors about the buyout. Well, he didn't talk to Mark Stoops. Obviously, he didn't have a direct line to Mark Stoops. And Mark Stoops doesn't look like a guy that would just go out easily, does he?
No, he does not.
When you watch him on the sidelines, he's just got that feisty look about him.
Looks like someone who wants to wrestle a black bear, you know? He does not look like someone who's going to meet in the middle on his buyout. No, I think he would wrestle the black bear for the $40 million. He doesn't have to, though, because it's written right into his contract. $40 million. You want to get rid of this man? It's $40 million. And I don't feel sorry for Kentucky either, John. I mean, these schools get themselves into these situations where they write into the contract these massive buyouts. And I'm thinking, like, who was coming to kick down the door to steal Mark Stoops away? I mean, Texas A&M thought about it until they floated a trial balloon and their fan base said, "Are you kidding me? Mark Stoops?" Pop went that trial balloon, but no. Kentucky's got this monstrous buyout written into the contract. So I don't feel sorry for Kentucky. You want to get rid of Mark Stoops? Stroke a $40 million check and get rid of him then.
He'd be laughing all the way to the bank, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He'll go then. Yeah, and what I like about Stoops too is he's pretty good at coming up with his excuses. I think in his mind, hey, I'm doing just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm doing just fine. I mean, I don't have he's referenced the NIL shortcomings at Kentucky before, and I'm sure he points over there at the basketball program and said, "Well, yeah, they're spending all their money on that basketball team they're building for 25, 26. Look at all the transfers and the elite signees they're bringing in. So there's just not enough left over for me. In fact, I'm doing really good with what I've got."
Is there's no more hopeless program in the SEC right now. And I'm not talking about hopeless in terms of the team. The team is not good. The team's hopeless. But a lot of teams that are in tough situations, the fan base can at least grab on to the idea, well, a coaching search is coming, right? If head coach doesn't turn it around, coaching search is coming. And then here's Kentucky sitting on 3 losses, just 2 wins. You look at the remaining schedule, Kentucky's probably going to finish somewhere in the vicinity of 3-9, 4-8. Maybe the best they can hope for is to quote unquote get hot and get to 5-7. But where's the hope? Like, what are you going to do? You're going to pay $40 million to fire Mark Stoops? No, I mean, they're really just, that is the program right now in the SEC that can't even cling to the idea of a coaching search. It's trapped, and Mark Stoops has thrown away the key.
Yeah, I don't see any hope for it. I don't see any wins.
I think Tennessee Tech's on this schedule.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Tennessee Tech, I guess if Auburn just decides to quit, maybe it could go into Jordan Hare and pull off an upset or something if Auburn goes down the tubes. But you're right; it's got Florida in Lexington, and yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't think it can beat Vanderbilt in Nashville. But here's the thing, and I don't mean to single out one player too much, but if your offensive hope is to go get Zach Calzado at quarterback from Incarnate Word, I mean, if that's your lifeline for a better football future, I mean, wasn't that kind of flawed thinking?
Yeah, that was probably some foreshadowing, and they've moved on to Cutter Boley, and well,
Yeah, but
maybe that's the new hope. There just is no hope there. There really isn't. Shy of a $40 million check, I guess. No
well,
hope.
think about this, Blake. Have we deemed a program hopeless before on this podcast, and then it rose from the ashes and rose from our cynicism and skepticism and proved us wrong? Is there a program like that?
The mighty Vanderbilt Commodores. We probably declared them hopeless a time or two.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, every few years I'm compelled to write it doesn't belong in the SEC, but I'm not writing that anymore.
No. Although Vanderbilt squandered their big opportunity, and Tuscaloosa got served a helping of humble pie in a game that I think was a little bit more lopsided than the final score indicated. Alabama, I thought, played with its food a little bit in the first half, missed some opportunities. But speaking of hopeless, John, that brings us to our picks. You and I are pretty hopeless against the spread, up to our usual hijinks. We both went 2-3 last week, which sort of speaks to our overall clip. I'm now 14-16 for the season. You are 13-17 for the quest to get to 500. Here's my 5-pack of picks, John. I will start with what probably counts as the game of the week in the SEC. This is a contender or pretender game, I think, for Missouri. Alabama coming to town. Alabama, will they be exhausted after that emotional revenge game against Vanderbilt, having played Georgia a couple weeks ago? We mentioned Missouri's a tough out, particularly at Faurot Field the last few years, and this line has been creeping down and down and down. Now Alabama favored by just 2.5. I'm going to take the road team. Mentioned earlier, I think Alabama is the SEC's best bet for a national champion. So I will give the 2.5 points, take the road team. I am also giving the 2.5 points. And after all I've said about Texas, I think Texas gets one this week, playing against a backup quarterback, Michael Hawkins, against Oklahoma. I think Texas's playoff hopes stay alive, survive this rivalry game. So I will take the 2.5 point favorite, Texas. I'm taking the 12.5 point favorite, Tennessee Vols, at home. Arkansas in the midst of a coaching search. Interim coach Bobby Petrino will be making his case in Neyland Stadium. We know how good Tennessee has been at Neyland in the Josh Heupel era in the past few seasons. Georgia is the only team to beat Tennessee at Neyland. So I'm going to give the 12.5 point, take the Vols. I am taking the underdog and taking the 9.5 points and South Carolina at Tiger Stadium against LSU. I think LSU wins the game, but their offense has just been so shaky. Do I trust them to cover a 9.5 point spread? I do not. And my lock of the week, John, a game I will be covering. I'm stepping outside the conference for my coverage this week. I will be in Champaign, Illinois, close to home, to cover Ohio State coming to town and what was supposed to be a storied Illinois season. Well, the bloom fell off the rose for Illinois when they went to Indiana earlier this year. Now Ohio State, a 14.5 point favorite. I'm giving the points because nobody can score 10 points against Ohio State. And so I asked myself, can Ohio State get to 24 points? Because if they can get to 24 points, they are covering this 14.5 point spread. I think they can get to 24 points. I'll give the 14.5 and take the Buckeyes as my lock of the week.
Yeah, Illinois only scored 10 points on Indiana.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well,
I'm becoming a bigger and bigger believer in the Ohio State repeat, John. I mean, it's far from a certainty. We mentioned Miami Oregon, etc. But I think everybody looks at Ohio State and it's like, they haven't been that dazzling, that dominant, haven't played anybody. They just beat Minnesota 42-3. I know Minnesota's not great, but that's what Ohio State is now. It's to the point where like they've become so dominant that we're just bored by 39-point conference victories.
Well, yeah, see, I wasted a few minutes of my life watching that Ohio State Minnesota game. And it struck me though, the narrative now is there's no super team in college football because of the transfer portal, NIL, and all that good stuff. It's created some parity. You can't build up great quality depth. But then I watch what all of Ohio State lost from last season's championship team that just roared through the playoffs. And now I watch it this year and I think, heck, its defense might be even better even after losing all those players. So I kind of find its success refreshing. I'm at heart kind of a front runner. So if something
you like those dominant teams,
yeah, if things are going well, yeah, I'll hitch my wagon to that program. And so yeah, I think it's kind of refreshing to see a team in this supposedly parity-driven era that can build a team this formidable.
Yeah, and Julian Sayin has been like everything that
Yeah,
Arch Manning has not been. The other five-star quarterback who was kind of having the curtain lift on him, they didn't ask a lot of him in that Texas game. I think he could have maybe given him more, but that was his lid lifter. That was his first career start. He's a redshirt freshman. You look at that guy's stats. He's completing better than 80% of his passes. Now, he's got a great receiving core, but that completion rate is just mind-boggling. And again, I know the competition's not been great. The man's completing 80.2% of his passes. He's averaging more than 10 yards per attempt. He's quietly becoming a star in Columbus. And it's kind of quiet because the defense is the story, but my goodness, they got a quarterback who's completing more than 80% of his passes.
Yeah, you're right. He just sort of came in under the radar, which seemingly is hard to do when you're the quarterback for Ohio State. But yeah, you watch him throw the ball. He's got a quick release, a tight spiral. Yeah, but nobody talks. Is he's really mentioned as a Heisman candidate though? I mean, people
not yet.
No.
Not yet. And maybe part of it's because their one marquee game was not his best. He was asked to be kind of a game manager in that win against Texas. I think just because Ryan Day thought Texas can't score twice in this game, and he was right. But saying though he'll close at Michigan, and I don't know how good Michigan's going to be, but there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that game. So if he shows out in that regular season finale against Michigan and then plays well in the Big Ten championship, how quickly someone can rise the Heisman charts at the end of the season.
Sure.
If he looks good against Michigan in the Big Ten championship, he might steal that thing because there is no really clear-cut front runner at this point. How about your 5-pack of picks, John? What do you got for me?
Well, I didn't know if I've done so poorly. I wondered if you might suspend me and not let me pick this week. But
no, of course not. I got to beat somebody.
Okay. I mean, thanks. I appreciate it. I don't take that honor for granted. Very similar to yours. I like Texas. We spent most of our podcast bashing the Longhorns. But gosh, Michael Hawkins, I was looking at his stat line for last year's game. When he was a starter, he wrested the starting job away from Jackson Arnold. Granted, he had no offensive line to speak of, and all his receivers were hurt. So he just kind of ran around back there behind the line a lot and never got anywhere. He'd break 2 tackles, and the third one would get him for a 2-yard loss. Really interesting line, 20 carries for a net 27 yards. So I don't have any confidence in him. Arch Manning can beat that. I'll take Texas and give the points.
Okay, we're aligned.
I also like Alabama against Missouri. I just don't know what to make of Missouri. I don't. Its defense wasn't that good against Kansas, which does have some offensive firepower, but it hasn't got a marquee win. It could have one, I guess, Saturday. And the way we're picking, it probably will. So, but I will take Alabama, and then I really like Tennessee given 12.5 points. That Arkansas defense is something special.
Yeah.
I mean, the audacity of an interim coach to say, as Bobby Petrino did, granted, not a typical interim coach with that kind of mindset, he just gets rid, he just fires a couple of defensive coaches. It's like, oh, these guys are dragging us down. I'm not, I won't tolerate that. I'll get a guy off the street and come in here and we'll play better defensively. We'll have a student coach the defense. But yeah, that's a horrible defense. Miss a lot of tackles. Tennessee's offense is pretty potent, especially at Neyland Stadium. So I like that. That might be my lock of the week if it weren't in the SEC. And then my other one would be here's where we go apart. I know how bad LSU's offense is. And it's like I can't help myself. I just have this.
You can't. They're holding you captive the way Texas A&M once did.
Yes, it's like the Stockholm syndrome. I've bonded with my kidnappers here, and I believe they're going to be fine and that they're good people, and we'll get through this together. And all that good stuff.
Take the stand for them. They get put on trial, and you're the star witness.
Yeah, they got a few glitches, but overall they're good folk. So I will take. I'm going to take LSU and give 9.5 points. Part of that is I just don't know if South Carolina can move the ball that well against LSU's defenses. You have to admit the defense is pretty good.
Yeah, you've been out on South Carolina since the preseason. You were spot on that one. They were one of the most overrated teams in the country.
Well, okay, that's really our own. And for I really like your lock of the week with Ohio State. One of my top consultants, Cody
Campbell, right? The billionaire out in Texas.
No, but he's high on the Red Raiders too. Both Codys are high on the Red Raiders.
You're sure this isn't Cody Campbell?
No, Cody Campbell's.
No, you're not sure. Do you know what Cody Campbell looks like?
Yeah, I do. This isn't my Cody's.
He's on a commercial every 27 seconds.
Oh, I know. And my Cody's smaller.
Okay,
but not as wealthy probably, but he's doing okay. He can bet. And he bets, and he's betting on Texas Tech again and giving the points. But I'm not taking that. Here's where the great ones adapt and adjust. And here's what I'm doing. Remember all the times I picked Kent State?
I do. They turned their back on you this year. Started covering spreads.
Yes. And so what am I doing? I'm adjusting. I'm taking Kent State and giving 3.5 points to UMass. Check out UMass on a slow day when you got nothing going on in your life, nothing going on. Review the highlights of UMass this season. It's 0-5, and I think it's the worst team in college football. And I'm betting on the Golden Flashes just running it up on those guys.
Mm-hmm. Tune in on ESPN Plus for UMass.
No, it's ESPN minus. That's where that game is shown. It's only available to a few people.
Yeah, I know you'll be one of them.
Oh,
John.
Definitely, yeah.
And you'll be back with me next week.
That game why wouldn't they play that game on a Wednesday night? I mean, it has Wednesday night written all over it.
We'll get into that next week, John.
Okay.
For now, thanks for listening to this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.